All right, welcome to Football After Hours. Just getting all of this set up here. And let's see, we should be good to go shortly. All right. Let's see. All right, yeah, perfect. All right. With Scoop, Will, Adam, Brandon, we are set to go to talk about Super Bowl 43. This is one of the best games ever, guys. This game is so fun.
Yeah.
And Adam, it's perfect to have you here with us today, as you are a Steelers fan. So, what are your memories of this classic?
I will say it's the last time I felt joy as a Steelers fan.
It's been that long. It's been that long.
No, dude. I mean, honestly, so many memories. How old was I at the time? It was 2009.
It was 09 season.
So I was 8 years old watching this. And no, I just remember being unbelievably hyped watching it. I have such a vivid memory specifically of obviously the two big moments in it, which is James Harrison, 101-yard pick six, and then Santonio Holmes. Just such vivid memories of that, despite being so young and oh my god, what a time to be alive.
Yeah, Brandon, what is it for you rewatching this one?
You know what's funny is that Adam and I rewatched it together, and
oh my god, that's a party.
Yeah, and it was there were so many things that the first thing that stood out, and I called it right away, as we were watching just the game unfold, is just, well, first of all, the old kickoff, which is nice, to see there was actually returns in this game. And the way they used to be before, they pushed the kickoff up and it was touchbacks, and then they changed the rule again to what it is now. But you know what's funny is this game, people it. If you look at it, you can kind of be it played the game. It took place 15 years ago, right? But the way they played that game feels a lot more old school than that. It feels like it's a different era entirely. We were looking at the formations and we're like, wow, everything is run with two tight end sets or two running backs split, beside the quarterback. Everything just looked really tight.
Yeah, you did not see three wide until the fourth quarter.
No, yeah. And then the thing is, when you saw it, oh, I know that because that still happens now. But it was wow. It was weird because just watching it, it felt like it was I remember that game vividly as a little kid, but to watch it back now, I'm like, wow, that it seems like a whole different era compared to today. And I mean, it really was, but it's just crazy to think about. Back then, what constituted good football, and this was a good game, but it's people think good games nowadays, and they think high scoring, right? But this game wasn't high scoring; it was just fun. It was it was back and forth. At one point, the Steelers I think had a 10-point lead in this game. I think it was 17-7, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and then eventually, the Cardinals taking the lead late, and then obviously we know the final drive for the Steelers and how that ended. But, so it is a classic. It's just not a classic if you were to show a kid today this game, they'd be like, oh, that's boring. But it's for us, that, and for most people that were there to see it, it's no, that's a classic game. And it's that was football. Compared to today, a lot of things have changed, but that was a great game.
You know what hasn't changed? Me and Bren were watching, right? And he was like, wow, it's just crazy to see how different the offense, we're watching the Steelers on offense. And I'm like, damn, this looks exactly like how the Steelers play offense now.
Oh my god. Unfortunately, Scoop seems like he's having some technical difficulties, but Will, for you, what stood out for you?
well, there was a couple of things. I remember the first drive, man. Well, I remember they was driving down the field, and Big Ben was going to rush him for the touchdown. We thought it was in the opening drive, but it
Mhm.
was the knee down. And I was thinking to myself, a Seahawks fan, I was like, okay, yeah, I know about this. And then they actually, like, Madden and Michaels actually referred to what happened. It was like 3 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, yes, they actually mentioned what happened with Big Ben with the knee down, and they still called a touchdown at a Ford Field. So that was funny to me. And also they mentioned Mike Holmgren, so that was touching too.
Mike
But
Holmgren was at the halftime. Mike Holmgren was part of the halftime show for this, which I thought was
he was.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and also John Madden, man, man, looking back, like rest in peace. But man, it's like looking back, man, I think he's terribly missed as far as a broadcaster goes because I don't think as color goes, he's arguably the best. I think right now, like Greg Olson and Tom Brady are up there. They all right too, but I just think that John Madden is like top tier as what he's done, especially describing the game. And I thought, and especially when he said, it was a funny line. It was, when they showed up Dick Lambert, I forgot his name. I think Lambeau. Yeah, Lambert.
Yeah.
I think I forgot his name.
Yeah.
LeBeau.
I remember they
LeBeau.
mentioned
Yeah.
Lambeau. Yeah. And then it was like, he was like 71 to 40 or 34 or 43, whatever. He's talking about his age. And that was actually funny because yeah, he was aged like fine wine. But that was pretty good line by John Madden.
Mike
But,
Tomlin's 36.
yeah, 36.
Jesus,
Yeah, it was crazy.
36.
Because
Wow.
I think they mentioned him in Woodley. I think they was like they
Mhm.
was yeah, close to age as far as that goes. And I thought that it was, as far as the game goes, man, it was arguably, yeah, it was like a top five Super Bowl for me. I think it went back and forth. There's been times that honestly, there was defensive pressure as far as like not having Larry Fitzgerald break out early on until like later on in the second half he starts, getting the catches and he got the touchdown and obviously 2 touchdowns late. So that was pretty good as far as that goes. And there was a lot of like just dumping off to the running back. I remember with the Cardinals with Edwin James just dumping out to him, and then with the Steelers, like basically give it to Heath Miller, which I know Brandon was thinking, like, man, imagine if Frank or Pat Fryermuth was getting that type of
Yeah.
touches. Like, imagine that. And I was thinking, like, man, like, yeah, that's crazy. And then like Heath Miller was getting all those touches. I was like, all right, that's what I'm talking about because I know Big Ben like throwing to those tight ends. So that was good. Yeah, I know Hines Ward. I heard they say he had like a shoulder injury or his shoulder hurt a bit, so I know he wasn't used that much. So I thought it was like a lot of different stories him weaving into that, especially at the end, that final drive. Man, when they was dissecting it and how Santana Holmes, man, how he was able to catch it, like boom, first down, like, and then especially at the end zone, where it's like one time it's like at the left side they almost about to catch it, but he missed it. They missed it just a mark out, and the other side he finally got it. So that was a pretty good final drive, and honestly, it's a Super Bowl to remember. And honestly, besides those type of drives, if Santana Holmes didn't win or didn't do that drive, or I think that honestly there could be consideration that James Harrison, if he could have possibly been a Super Bowl MVP because he was a viable option for that. But I kind of give it Santana Holmes with that drive, the integral part as far as winning the Super Bowl goes. But yeah, it was a very, very good game, and it could have gone either way for both teams.
Yeah, and let's go back and talk about John Madden because it's like for us and Brandon and Adam, you can talk about this. It's kind of cathartic listening to him, isn't it?
Yeah.
It kind of
Yeah.
just feels so natural, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I obviously, don't remember a lot. I don't remember a lot of John Madden broadcasts, obviously.
Me either.
But man, going back and listening to that, he was really good at what he did. I mean,
Yeah,
that's why he's a household name. But,
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
they named a video game after him.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's what's crazy about Madden is he didn't call the game like other color commentators. He didn't call the game like he wasn't dissecting things too much. He was calling it how he saw it, and that's what was cool about him on broadcast. Like he's the first. Him and Michaels are the first duo I remember together. Like and of course Buck and Aikman, but more so Madden and Michaels, especially when I was a little kid. We were all little kids. Coming home from school, or not coming home from school, but you had homework. You had homework due on Monday, and on Sunday night, you were like, well, I can't miss this game because it's football. But and of course their voices through the TV, were just so great. Everybody talks about Madden and Summerall being together, and of course we weren't alive for that. I mean, we were, but Pat Summerall, rest in peace, he passed when we were toddlers. But Madden and Michaels together were just such a good duo, and I couldn't think of a better duo to do a game like this. That was a classic like this. So, I mean, you got a legendary game and a legendary broadcast team. What else do you need?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like Adam, you can speak to this. The running game for both sides. I mean, we didn't really get many passes until the fourth quarter, particularly for the Cardinals. I mean, Kurt Warner, back half of his career, like really back half, but it's kind of that's the most fascinating part to me every time I rewatch this. It's just watching the running games and me like, yeah, we don't really have these kind of smash mouth running style these days.
Unless you watch the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for sure. It's such a pass heavy league now, but you see it's starting to fall the other way.
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with Brandon during the broadcast, while we were rewatching, about how what really determines like the run game is the linebackers, because it was such a run heavy league that you were getting heavier and heavier linebackers that were real downhill smash mouth, right? And then they started throwing over the top of them, because they couldn't match up in coverage. So what happens? Linebackers start getting faster, they start getting lighter, they're better in pass coverage, and now it's starting to teeter the other way, where we're seeing teams like the Eagles just run the ball the majority of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, the running style though is definitely different even now.
Oh yeah, I mean,
sorry,
no, you're good, Ed. But it's crazy to look at, especially in this game. Because I believe that for the Cardinals, their running back at the time was an older Edgerrin James.
Yeah.
So he wasn't in his prime anymore. But at the same time, to have him on one side and of course Willie Parker on the other, those are two really good running backs. I mean, they were known for being a little bit more physical. They weren't known for their speed as much. They were known for being straight up the middle, smash mouth running backs, and that's what you saw a lot of in this game, more so from Willie Parker. But because that Steelers defense was not letting Edgerrin James go anywhere for a good majority of it. But it's definitely like running backs now are I should say, like, just in general, because there are exceptions to the rule, but in general, running backs now are a lot faster. They're a lot more elusive. They're stronger, probably, in some regards. Derrick Henry's a perfect example of that. But
yep,
you got Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Saquon, even Bucky Irving in Tampa has a different type of running style than what we're used to seeing nowadays. And and now running backs are more so, they can pass catch and they can run the football. So it's like back then a running back was rarely used in a running game unless you're up in the passing game, unless you were just dumping it off because they were the last read in the offense. Now sometimes on a play they're the first read. So it's definitely different. Like it's definitely different watching this game and just watching a quarterback under center take a snap. And the thing is, there was not many in this game, at least not that I remember. There wasn't many shotgun snaps where they handed off to a running back, or there's no such thing as an RPO. It's under center, hand it off, or under center, play action fake, throw it. And a lot of the plays take a little bit longer to develop back then than they do now. So it's definitely it's a culture shock to watch this game again because it's a little bit different than what I remembered. Even though I knew it was going to be a little bit slower, it's different than what I remembered. But even from everything, the O-line play, the running back play, quarterbacks, But Kurt Warner had a hell of a game in this game. It's just that he didn't come out the winner. But that's credit to the Steelers defense just making plays. They beat the crap out of them. But when it comes to just everything about this game, and running game is probably the biggest part of it, I would think. It's just how it just seemed more like a much more brutal game, for lack of a better word. It was much more like physical. Every yard is contested. Every time I saw one of those running backs get a handoff, they had to break like 3 tackles just to get 2 yards.
Even in the passing game, sorry to interrupt real quick, but you mentioned it. Like, even in the passing game, with the one exception being Larry Fitz taking a slant to the house, there is no run after catch. It's none. Catch dropped on the spot for both sides.
Yeah, there was I know Anquan Bolden had like a huge yard at the first half, I believe. Yeah.
But it wasn't many. San Antonio Holmes had there's probably you could probably count on one hand how many there were in that game. Versus nowadays, you see it every other drive. It feels like. So it's definitely like that. That's just a testament to how the rules have kind of changed, how defenses, the philosophies have changed. A lot of things have changed. There are some things that have stayed the same. Like Adam said, if you watch this game, it looks like the current Steelers offense. That hasn't changed, but it's but a lot of things just about this game, it just feel like it's weird to think that it wasn't that long ago. It was 15 years ago. It wasn't like it was 40 years ago. So it's definitely weird to watch this game back, and just for a game that we were alive for, and can remember pretty well. That it's crazy how much things have changed. A lot. There's a couple of things I've seen stay the same, but a lot has changed.
The craziest thing craziest thing when I'm looking back at this offense, and then I think when Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown arrived, that offense really changed drastically in my opinion, because they did air it out a lot to Antonio Brown, or they give it to Antonio Brown and let him do his thing, and then with Le'Veon, of course, he does the every down back, and he was pretty integral as far as running game too. So it really shows the different dynamic when Antonio Brown and Le'Veon came later on, and before they arrived to the Steelers, that this offense was like this. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, Adam, for you defensively for the Steelers, I mean, this is your golden era pretty much. I mean, you guys still, defensively, you're the Steelers. That's what you guys are, especially in that division. But looking back at this era, I mean, it's a golden era for this defense.
For sure. I'm sitting there looking at Lamar Woodley and James Harrison, who had won Defensive Player of the Year that year. Brett Kiesel, Ike Taylor back there. My favorite player of all time, Troy Polamalu. I mean, it was fun. It was definitely fun to watch.
I think he had a quiet game, right? Troy Polamalu.
Troy definitely had a quiet game. He made
he missed
one really
one
nice
tackle.
play, but
I remember he missed one rare open field tackle, and I was like, "Wow, that was crazy." I didn't ever see that with Troy Polamalu.
Yeah. One thing that I was kind of shocked about watching the game is that, man, I didn't expect it, but it was still the ref show. The Zebras found their way to make it all about them. They really did.
Yeah.
I sent you guys a stat at some point in the game. There's 2 really fun statistical variant stuff. One, they did Larry Fitzgerald's catch radius, which is extremely fun, obviously, especially watching Larry, in his prime and towards the later part. But the other aspect of it is the fact that 91 penalty yards for the Cardinals.
Oh,
and some of the holds were extremely obvious too. And I'm like, oh my God.
96. It was 96. I think they got very close to 100 yards in penalties.
Yeah, realistically, there was only one questionable call throughout the game, and that was the roughing the passer on Ben. That was the only one where I was like, I don't think so. But the rest were pretty spot on.
Yeah.
Ben is definitely a lot more mobile too. But we'll go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, I was just saying the craziest thing. I didn't see the rough in the passer because the camera missed it, but I thought it was like a intentional grounding at first because I didn't see no receivers at that area, and I was like, huh, okay, it was rough in the passer, and I was like, I don't know, slightly off. I guess the ref was like trying to check if he was touching Big Ben, but he did touch him a bit before the ball came out, but or after, I mean. So it was like it was pretty weird on that end.
Yeah. Adam, for you watching, particularly in that first quarter, just Ben's mobility. I mean, it's nothing, world beating compared to today, but it's still kind of fascinating to see him move around the pocket.
It really is. And like, especially for that time, it's like no one else really did that. Just seeing him, especially there's it's the highlight I've seen a bajillion times of him evading tacklers and hitting Heath Miller on like the left side of the field.
Yeah.
I mean, God, watching Ben play that game was definitely nostalgic. And I was like, yeah, he was that dude.
Yeah. Brandon, we're not going to have that kind of big physical quarterback anymore, right? Quarterbacks are getting leaner, they're getting smaller.
Yeah,
right. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just where the league is going. But I mean, it's wild.
I remember when and this was the actual comp that they did. I remember when Carson Wentz came out, they said, "Oh yeah, he's got the mobility of Russell Wilson, and he's got like the size of Big Ben." And I'm like, "Well, all right," but then of course his mobility went as fast as his ACL did, but you'll never see that rare combination of size and speed from a quarterback. I mean, like all the speed quarterbacks nowadays, whether that's Russell Wilson doesn't count anymore; he's old. But
he's done. Yeah, he's done. He's done.
Yeah, but him in his prime. I mean, smaller but faster and can make throws. Wasn't the strongest arm, but was a really good arm. And then you got Lamar now. You got Lamar now. Lamar, I mean, he's not beefy. He's definitely on the skinnier side, but he's skinny. He's fast. He was compared to he's basically what Michael Vick. He's what Michael Vick should have been. He's Michael Vick, new and improved Michael Vick times 10. Like, so he's got that kind of style. My own quarterback, Jalen Hurts, is like that. But the thing is, Jalen doesn't have the height, like but he's built strong. He's tough. And it's like so, but you'll never see that kind of quarterback where it's like as huge as Ben was. Like, Ben couldn't run, but Ben was elusive, which is like the weirdest thing to think about. But there's a whole highlight tape of him just evading, would-be sacks. So
yeah, he never really took off to run. It would just be extend play, wait for someone to come open, boom.
And he made a career out of it, which is crazy. But it's like, how many bigger quarterbacks, have we seen like that? There hasn't been.
Aside from Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, he's it. But the thing is, he doesn't. If he breaks it's different. Well, it's a little different. Yeah, he's the same kind of build and stuff, but it's a little different because if Josh Allen, if the pocket's breaking down, like not like Ben, he's not going to dance around in the backfield and wait for someone to come open. He's going to move out of the backfield and run. So that that part of the game has changed. Quarterbacks aren't looking to extend the play as much anymore. They'll just take off and go. When they feel it, when it's really collapsing around them and no one's open. So it's definitely, I don't think we will see a quarterback like a Big Ben again. I mean, Josh Allen is probably the closest. Yeah, you're right, Ed. But I can't see it because to be, when you're that big, to be that elusive, that's just beyond rare. Like, the only other guy in sports that's that big and fast is Aaron Judge. So, like, but other than that, but in terms of, football terms, there's not going to be, I can't see it. When you're built that big, they're going to try to fit you into a certain mold or you just probably won't have the speed because you'll be that big.
Just wait, Will Howard, man. You just wait. Oh. I'm kidding.
Please don't.
Here we go.
Yeah,
here we go.
I'm kidding.
That, please. Oh no! Listen. I don't know what you guys are gonna do at quarterback, but
it's Aaron. It's Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron's taking us to the chip, bro. He owes us one. He owes us one.
But I'm saying 1 year deal, and then what?
flashbacks.
Yeah. Will, when it comes to Big Ben, what stands out to you in this game?
I think the big thing about Big Ben is I always thought, especially with his longevity, of how much punishment he does take most of the time,
Yeah.
but he's able to throw a pretty good ball. And I thought that really shows in the Super Bowl. Though I think Kurt Warner like outplayed him like statistically despite that pick six. Like yards go, Kurt Warner was better, but Big Ben didn't make the necessary plays, especially down the stretch, and the defense did what they did. So I always thought Big Ben was arguably, to me, the best quarterback in his own draft class. And I thought that, you got Eli, especially those 2 Super Bowl rings versus Brady. I think Philip Rivers statistically in the regular season is a mixed bag some of the time. But I always thought that Big Ben was the best quarterback in that draft class and been the most successful overall. And I thought that, especially how well he was able, especially of course, he's not fast, but he is a physical big body. Um, because honestly, yeah, I believe there's not really much quarterbacks like him in this league anymore. Like we said, besides Josh Allen, like there's also, I know Kyler Murray is sort of like a big body, small guy, but he's not physically big, but like he's enough like Russell Wilson type, like short, big that he's a little bit fast. But as far as a big body goes, yeah, besides Josh Allen, not people like Big Ben most of the time with how big he is. But yeah, in this game he was sensational, and honestly, I can't wait until he gets to the Hall of Fame. I'm not sure what year it's going to be.
2 more years.
It's
2 more
2 more
years?
years.
For him?
2 more
Okay.
years. Yeah, 2 more years. Because I don't think there's going to be. Because I think the only competition quarterback goes is obviously Tom Brady, obviously.
Yeah,
Tom
Brady's
is
a year
a
after
long
him,
way
though.
away
And
from Tom Brady.
a long way. And then there's Drew Brees. And then, yeah, besides those, it's not really much that can, like, that's going to overshadow, like, Big Ben to get in. And also, there's also obviously non-quarterbacks. There's like a bunch of them too. So I think he would get in. But yeah, Big Ben was pretty good in that one because he did the necessary things he had to do. Obviously, the defense overshadowed him a bit in the first half, but he did what he had to do at the end. So honestly, like Big Ben did all right, especially that amazing throw to Santonio Holmes, which was uncatchable. That probably the top 2 catch. Everything between that one and the Julia Edelman catch in that Super Bowl versus the Falcons, I will put them like sort of those 2 as far as difficulty goes. But that was a great throw by him by Big Ben to Holmes at the end. But yeah, Big Ben did pretty good for what he needed to do in that game.
Yeah, definitely. And Adam, to finish this off for you, I mean, it's funny seeing Bruce Arians as your OC.
Yeah.
Because I saw it, and every time I watch this game, that always kind of throws me through a loop. But talk about those similarities between last year's Steelers and this game for the Steelers. 'Cause I think that's kind of fascinating. I mean, it sucks for you, but I think it is kind of a fascinating part of this.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like obviously being super run heavy, but it's like the lack of creativity in the run game. It's just kind of north south go, and a lot of that last year was there's a sort of conceptual difference between how Najee runs and how Arthur Smith teaches blocking. He's his own run scheme. Najee is north south runner, but then also just like no throws down the field, not really like deep over the middle. A lot of just throwing to the sideline. So, I mean, screens galore. Me and Brandon were saying, oh my God, both teams. Screens. But yeah, specifically for the Steelers, it's like, man, the offense they ran then is like what their Steelers are trying to do now with extremely less success because the league is just different. I don't know. That's kind of it.
Yeah. Anything else as a whole for this game before we call it with that? Like anything else that really stood out?
Yeah, I have one. So between, I think, James Harrison and Kurt Warner, what do you think is the the best undrafted player of all time.
Oh
Because I know
my God,
there's
between
also
those two.
yeah.
Well, Kurt's in the Hall.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
probably
So,
Kurt
true.
Warner.
James Harris, I think he's gonna get in.
it's
Maybe like in
borderline,
a
I think.
weak year, he might sneak in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like he had a couple really he had like one or that was his only defensive player of the year, and he had 16 sacks, and that was his career high. Like he was a great player, but I don't
But
know.
that was his peak.
That was his peak. Yeah.
After that, he dropped off hard. Like
Yeah, that's true.
that's what's tough is like his numbers aren't quite there. I mean, there's some guys in the Hall that are around that, but from a different era, it was different.
Now he
So
had a lot of durability. He played a super long time, and that's why he got to 100 career sacks because he played so long. But he wasn't necessarily like,
I
don't know, Hall of Fame worthy. I think.
Yeah, I mean he's not hurt. I mean he's not hurt, and he's a Steelers legend. He's got what, one Super Bowl or two? So
one, I think.
Yeah.
What?
I don't think he was on the team
there
for
in
the first
Seattle.
I don't think so.
He wasn't for Seattle. I wasn't.
I don't know.
I'm not sure if he has another one. I know he's got that one. Obviously.
It was before my time, man. I don't remember that game.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure it out.
Because I know
I was
he went undrafted in 2004 draft, right? I forgot what draft he went undrafted.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually curious. I'm gonna look it up real quick since I'm already on Wikipedia. But yeah, I think between those two,
two-time Super Bowl champion because he beat.
Oh, he was there. He was
Seattle.
there. Yeah, he was there. Okay.
That's weird that actually he went undrafted in 2002. Was only a Steeler for like a year. He was only a Steeler for like a year. Left, came back in 2004, won in 2005, and then won again in 2008. Well, the 2008-09 season.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you look at after that Super Bowl season, he had 10 sacks in 2009, then 10.5 in 10, then 9 and 11, and then after that, after 2011, after that, he never got more than 6 sacks the last 6 years of his career, 6-7 years of his career.
Dang.
So that's definitely tough to, because he ended up his career. It says he ended up with 84.5 sacks. So it's tough because I mean he only had 3 straight seasons of double digits, but then everything else was either, it was basically around 6 or less for the majority of the rest of his career. So, he had that burst when he was in his prime, but that was pretty much around that time, like right after a couple years after that, he was like starting to fade.
And later in his career, it would be very like he'd have a game with like 3 sacks and then would just disappear. So it would be like he would just dominate. He'd have like 1 or 2 games a season where he was just dominant, and then kind of wasn't there the rest of the time.
Yeah, he do get in trouble a lot though, especially how he plays. So I kind of get it.
John Madden with that. At one point, he made a guy who's like, James Harrison should be ejected for that, and I was like, bruh.
What?
I thought we weren't doing this. What year is it?
I remember that. But you know what's funny is like, and then like on the flip side, since we're talking about Kurt Warner and James Harrison, like Kurt Warner, his career is so interesting because when you look at the numbers, they're not super impressive overall. But then when you realize that he either bounced around to crap teams, was hurt, like those were the 2 big things. Is that like was injuries and being on just really bad football teams that just didn't help him. So, like when you think about it, the numbers are actually really good for what he had, and especially for that time period, for that time in the NFL. Those are actually really good numbers. So
like 4,500 passing yards or something like that. They showed his stats that year.
Yeah, that year. Yeah, actually, because he played one more year after that, and it actually wasn't that bad of a year after that. But because they actually made the playoffs the following year too. But it's funny, in that year that they lost the Super Bowl, the Cardinals, that's when actually Kurt Warner, he set the record for touchdowns in a postseason, for passing touchdowns in a postseason. He had 11.
Wow.
So like Kurt Warner, everybody's like, oh well, the Rams Kurt Warner is so great, right? Because he has the Super Bowl, greatest show on turf. Like I venture to say that Cardinals Kurt Warner might, I mean, not better, but just as good.
Well, he probably
Yeah.
I think
Honestly,
Just as good as
honestly,
solid, yeah.
And honestly, I think it could be debatable, but honestly, I think Cardinals Kurt Warner is probably the best quarterback the Cardinals ever had. And like, yeah, I might have to go stretch a little bit back before the Super Bowl era, but you got to think about it. Like they had some good. I think like one quarterback like led the league in passing yards. I think.
I mean, Carson
So it's
Palmer was good for a while there.
Yeah, Palmer was. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to
Tyler
really
is
figure it out.
disgustingly
Besides,
overrated.
yeah, he is. Call of
Because
Duty caliber.
he's really fun to use in Madden, so kids are just like, Kyler's great.
Yeah.
It's true.
But yeah, I think he's the best quarterback probably the Cardinals ever had, and it's probably no one close.
I mean, because when you look at like Carson Palmer, if you take out, well, you can't take it out. But I'm saying if you take out the 2015 season he had, where he was incredible, Kurt Warner in his Cardinals career has better numbers than Carson Palmer. So it's funny because like Carson, that 2015 season was absolutely insane for Carson Palmer, but it was like almost like it was a Linsanity run. But then like but that was Carson, because Carson Palmer was another one of those guys that was like a gunslinger, that he was that kind of type of quarterback. But it's funny because like and the thing, Kurt Warner, everybody talks about like, oh, Kurt Warner's numbers are like that he's in the hall, but because I've heard people say this, that Kurt Warner's in the hall, but he shouldn't be. And I'm like, well, no, because he's a 2-time MVP. He's a Super Bowl champion. He made another Super Bowl where he balled out and lost.
He's on the list. He's on the list of a quarterback that you can't talk about the NFL or NFL history without Kurt Warner.
The story of Kurt Warner is literally one of the greatest stories in sports ever.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen American Underdog, go watch that movie.
Yeah, or go watch his football life, or go. I think there's even a football life and a 30 for 30 about Kurt Warner.
Yeah,
or at least the greatest show on turf. Like if you go literally watch the story of Kurt Warner, where they said that they basically found him playing in the Arena League and also bagging groceries.
Bagging groceries,
like that's enough to put him in the hall alone. Is the fact that he literally is the only guy. Not only just to be in the NFL with that kind of story. Like there's been other guys like that after him, but nobody really before him. He was like the first one.
Romo was undrafted too, right?
Yeah. But like where Warner went, where they called him.
Definitely not as good, but still.
Saying, oh, nothing more than a camp arm. We found this guy bagging groceries. Who cares who Kurt Warner is? Watching him going to play in the Arena League for the Iowa Barnstormers, who are actually still a team, by the way. And all that stuff, and then basically finding him in the middle of nowhere in both his career and his life, and to not only make the end, to get to the NFL, but to be as successful as he was. Because if he was not as injured as he was after his Rams run, or by that very end of his Rams run, and then the rest until he became a Cardinal, if you take those years where he was, injured or just on crappy Giants teams, and that kind of stuff, if you just would have gave a healthy Kurt Warner the opportunity in those years, his numbers would be absolutely a Hall of Famer. And the thing is, they still basically are with what he did in a very condensed career. So. You can't take that away from him. He's a great quarterback with a great story. So to me, he's the better undrafted story compared to James Harrison. As much as James Harrison is great, but Kurt Warner's the better overall story.
Yeah. It's a spectacular story. It's great. Yeah. Anything else on this game? Any last thoughts?
Stairway to 7.
God.
Aaron Rodgers is going to bring us to the trip.
I don't know about that, but it's wishful thinking.
He's not.
Yeah.
No, it's written in the stars. He's going to take us to the AFC Championship. Brett Favre took the Vikings to the NFC Championship after sucking on the Jets. It's written in the stars. We're going to the AFC Championship.
Jesus.
Yeah.
William, do you want to talk about Imaginary?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, this movie, I know it's not a lot of people know about this movie that I picked. I know it came out, I believe, in 2024, just last year, I believe.
Yep, 2024.
Yeah. So this is not that old. So I know the reason why I picked this is because obviously we're thinking, obviously the genre that was picked was obviously horror, and I was thinking like this is more of like a coming of age story about basically going back to what makes people like children is their imagination, and taking that aspect of that and turning it into a horror. Though it feels a little bit goofy, though I felt like honestly it came out to arguably something that's pretty creative, and especially when we found out that the teddy bear is actually a demonic creature that has its own actually going through this saying it, yeah, it's actually pretty goofy, but honestly but I think in the end of the day it actually shows that basically about basically growing up and overcome, some of those like past imagination as far as children goes, as far as what makes us children, but growing up, and honestly, that was a pretty good aspect of that. And though there has been a lot of jump scares in it and a lot of like painful scenes as far as when the girl had that teddy bear and she was trying to the teddy bear, I guess nobody knew, but the teddy bear was telling her to do these different check mark these different things, and she had to do a lot of like brutal things. Like one of them obviously was a brutal one was where she had like a nail and she had to take one of those borders off. There was like a nail right there and she had to like do something that's painful that she didn't want to do. That really was painful because I experienced that before, and a nail into like any part of your skin, it hurts.
The freaky part was the demonic thing like made it a flower. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, and yeah, it was crazy because he had to do like and also especially have to do all these like different things in order to open the gateway into that imagination land, and yeah, it was like it was pretty freaky, and honestly, I think, and honestly, that neighbor that knows a lot about that bear and that creature, all that stuff, actually found a twistly that she's like a twist villain. So that was kind of a bit like unexpected to me, but at the end of at the same time was a bit like cringe added to, especially when she became the villain. Then she wound up getting killed by the same person she was helping too. So that was a little bit meh, but it was okay. But yeah, it was a movie that basically mostly I think you have to have at least a fever dream to really watch this movie to really enjoy it.
Yes,
because
100%.
Yeah, like I know Brandon Row, y'all was watching. I was like, man,
I hated this.
I know. I was picking movies. I was thinking between that one or picking Orphan. I was thinking between those two. I should have picked Orphan, but
for me, the thing it was like I was just bored. That was the problem.
It was slow. It was
really slow, and it's like they put these different things of like, oh, this person's gonna get killed here, and it doesn't happen, and it's like I feel like they could have just written it and did the set pieces a lot better, which I know is basically everything about a horror movie, but it's like I could imagine someone else writing this and it would have been really solid. But
the thing is, any sorry, Ed. Any horror movie that you have that kind of features like this cliche, like either like set in a house or like a kind of like a family unit where it's a little bit of like a dysfunctional family kind of thing. Like anytime you kind of have like these kind of cliches like that, those movies tend to typically be slower, but at least there's like more like creeping fear to this. Like I never felt myself watching this, and I never felt afraid by it, like like antsy or nervous. It was like there was even one point where when the bear finally like exposed itself and like as a big monster, I actually started laughing because I'm like, we're supposed to be scared of that. Like that's like that's so funny.
I was thinking that too.
Like the second that the bear shows itself, like I was like, oh my god, it's like this looks like Five Nights at Freddy's all of a sudden. I'm like, I'm not scared of this. So like it's it was, the thing is, it was building up for so long, and for it to not really pay off is kind of I mean, the and then the ending kind of being like just very quick, like twists and turns, was a little bit like jarring because you spent so much of the movie building this up that like that's the kind of ending we get. It felt a little rushed, but I mean, it's not put it this way, it's not the worst horror movie I've seen. Is it one of? Yes. Is it? But is it the worst? No.
That's the thing. When I was also watching reviews after this, just to be like, am I hitting this on the nose or am I not? Like, am I getting this right? Like, am I thinking about this right? And a lot of people were like, by the time we got to the third act, I was so disinterested. And I think that to me is kind of where I'm at. Adam, I don't know if you watched this, but what's your take on? Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on it?
No, I think it was one of those things where it was like good concept, good idea.
Yeah.
Poor execution, like extremely poor execution. Like Brandon said, just kind of like full of horror movie cliches. And I mean, like I wanted to like it because going in, I'm like, okay, this idea seems solid. But then like you're watching it and just like you're just kind of confused. At one point, I'm like, what am I watching? Oh.
Yeah.
And
Brandon, finish up. Go ahead.
That's the thing too, is like the characters. Like if you're gonna make a movie like this and you know that it's gonna be cliched because kind of like a haunted house kind of setting, it's gonna have to be something like where the characters cannot be one dimensional. All the characters in this are one dimensional. Also, the father serves no purpose.
He leaves halfway through.
Not even halfway. He leaves like a third of the way in. So like, you like, what the hell is the purpose of having a character like that to begin with? Like, I kind of get it, but I also kind of don't, because then it's like, okay, then he's probably the most pointless character I've ever seen in a movie, because you just wrote him in as like a stand-in just to let him leave and let the rest of it focus on the other three main characters. So I get it because it's kind of setting the story for like, she's the stepmom, like she's not the mother of these kids, even though she wants to be, or she tries hard to be. But all the characters, it's like we've seen this in other horror movies before. And the thing is that they're also one-dimensional. You have the bratty teenage kid, the young kid that doesn't know any better, and the parent that doesn't quite fit in, that isn't like the cool parent or the actual parent of the children. Like, you've seen this before. So, like, someone said that this is like almost like a Poltergeist when that came out, many, many years ago before we were even born. And it's like it kind of, when you have a movie, you're trying to make a horror movie, like, because like a child's imagination is supposed to be bright, happy, crazy, kind of silly, whatever it is. When you're trying to make a horror movie version of a kid's imagination or a generational imagination, because this does end up being a generational kind of thing, it's you've got to be able to take it places that other movies haven't before, or that or that we haven't seen before, and this movie doesn't do that. It kind of just stays with the traditional like cliches that we've seen before, and it makes it like you're not like, and even the jump scares, I knew exactly what was going to happen like 2 minutes before it happened. So I was like, all right, I was like, okay, I'm not impressed by it. I mean, the set piece at the end of the whole imagination, that whole place, imaginary place, that was cool looking. All that kind of CGI stuff, the way and then also there's some of that stuff is practical effects. That was cool to look at, but outside of it being like visually cool for that kind of like 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was, the movie just doesn't go anywhere. Like the twists are kind of predictable. Like everything about it is very just formulaic, and it's like, you can make a good generic horror movie. It's just that you got to be able to keep the audience entertained. Like if I was watching that in theaters, I'd be like, okay, what part of this is supposed to entertain me? I've seen all these different characters before. I've seen a haunted house kind of movie before. It's not haunted house, but I've seen a haunted house-ish movie like that before. A lot of horror movies. Oh, you move into a nice big neighborhood and new family, start a new life, and all of a sudden these things go wrong in the house. So it's like, okay, we've seen a lot of that before. So it's tough that, like, that was good. That would have been a good movie for maybe like 20 years ago, but not now, not last year, 2024. It's like, we got to get new ideas. And it just felt like like I said, the only saving grace is that, like, that last set piece with the imaginary kind of land, whatever you want to call it. And then some of the, the background history of what her father did to actually save her and things like that, from being another child taken. Those things were kind of cool and a little sweet, but so that's what saves it for me from being the worst horror movie I've watched, because I've seen one or two that are worse than this, and God, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. Like, at least, like, if you want to go, like, maybe, like, if you want to just chill out and watch a horror movie, you could watch it. But if I wouldn't recommend this, I wouldn't recommend the other two, and I'll tell you guys about that when we get off of this. But because, oh Lord, the other two that I can think of, you don't want to watch at all. So, but the good thing is, Will, you've got more movies for us coming. And,
you got 4 more, so we're good.
And I know you'll preview them. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna preview one before we leave here, but I know you, and I know it can only go up from here. So
it's kind of like the Batman thing. We're doing the reverse.
We're doing the reverse. Yeah, I went descending. Will's gonna ascend.
I also want to add, I didn't actually watch the movie. I was just curious if I could get away with pretending that I watched the movie.
Honestly, you probably could. This one,
I was like, let me just say a bunch of really generic things, and then we'll see if.
But the thing is, it's believable. But the thing is,
it's that generic.
Because
it's that generic.
Yeah, that's how generic it really was. So actually, even though you didn't see it, honestly, if you just watch the trailer for it, you'll know.
Kind of get the
whole, like, all right, I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
What's your rating, Brandon?
Well, I mean, what was my lowest for? I mean, Batman and Robin was my lowest, and that was what
I gave that like a 3. I think we gave that like a 3. I'm gonna give this a 3 as well.
Yeah.
I have it at a 3.
I'll say 3.
I thought it was a 10, honestly.
10 out of 10. Woo!
Yeah, 10.
All right,
it's a 10 out of 10 in your imagination.
In my imagination. There we go. Imagination.
Oh, man.
Oh, Jesus. Will, what's your rating on this?
I gotta say 4 out of 10. I'll just give it a point because I did like the end of it where it's like, oh, you thought she escaped? Nope, she didn't escape. And I was like, and also the weird thing about them with the eyeballs and stuff kind of freaked me out a bit, but I laughed at it at the same time. But I just got to give it that. Yeah, like what Brandon said, the CGI stuff, the concept, and I guess it didn't execute, but I did like the visual stuff, so I give it a point there.
Also, does this movie Loki sounds like wannabe Coraline? Like Walmart
Coraline? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, Caroline was a better concept.
Coraline is such a good movie.
Yeah.
All right. Will, what are we doing next week? Have you decided?
All right, so next week? Yep, next week. So next week is going to be another coming of age movie. I think it's going to be a different take because he's sort of in like the DC realm, like Batman, but this is more so the different type of popular here in DC, Superman. But it's going to be like a different turn. It's not like explicitly say it's Superman, but it's sort of like a different take on it. It's a movie called Brightburn.
Yeah.
Brightburn.
Yeah.
You
All
were gonna
right.
say that.
I'm ready for
Yeah.
Brightburn. I'm
Yeah.
ready for this.
It's gonna be great. Honestly, the only thing disappointing about it is that they didn't build upon it further. I forgot who's the director of it. I was thinking it might be James Gunn, but I don't think this was James Gunn.
No, this is not James Gunn. This is Mark. James
He
Gunn produced this. He
produced it, yeah.
produced this.
He produced this, yeah. So honestly, it sucks that they didn't like explore this even further because I don't want to spoil it at the end, but there were going to be some more people that's like this evil Superman, like these different like superhero uh like being as far as like their origin stories go. So I guess they canceled out of nowhere. So, but this was something that's I honestly when you guys watch it, it's gonna be like some of it. It's gonna be a little bit painful to watch, but at the same time, it's gonna be pretty epic. But I'm gonna see what you guys think about it.
That's gonna be fun. All right. Well, for Brandon, for William, for Adam, for myself, we'll see you next week for another episode of Football After Hours. We'll see you then. Peace, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.
Take care, everybody.